Okay, today I'm going to talk about annotations. And to be honest, this is my favorite part of IIIF. So it's being able to add content to a IIIF manifest. So what are annotations? So we've seen examples of annotation in the last section about how we were annotating content onto canvases. So images onto canvases or audiovisual files onto canvases. But they can also be used for different types of annotating. So transcribing documents, creating comments on content or analyzing the content, highlighting the areas of the item, like handwritten annotations on a printed book. And they can also be used for teaching or explaining content for using tools like stories or exhibit. Annotations in IIIF follow the W3C annotation model and also its precursor, open annotations, which I'll go through the differences briefly. But this is the model of the W3C annotation model. So we have an annotation and it has a body and also has a target. So it's made up of two parts. The body, which is the resource, the content of what you're annotating, and the target is where you're annotating to. So examples of bodies might be the text transcription of a line. It might be a video giving background about a painting. It might be a IIIF image painted onto a canvas. And then the target is either the whole canvas, or it also could be a part of a canvas. So it could be the line of a text transcription or even a word. So if you look at the JSON, this is an example of an annotation. It has an identifier. All annotations should have an identifier, so you're able to retrieve it, and also a unique identifier for the particular annotation. Type is annotation. Motivation is commenting, and there are lots of different types of motivations, some which are defined by the IIIF specification in the case of painting, but there are lots of other motivations defined by the W3C annotation spec, including commenting, highlighting, lots of different motivations. And it's the reason that you're making this annotation. It has a body, so this is the thing that the content that you want to annotate. And in this example, it's textual body, and it's Zeus seated on a stool throne. And then you have a target, which is the location in the canvas where you want this annotation to be kind of drawn. And you can see it's got the XY width height here. And this one here, it's again similar to the IIIF image API. It's from the top left. So it's 3,706 pixels from the left, 208 pixels from the top, 522 pixels wide, and 520 pixels deep. And so we're highlighting this particular coin and it's saying it's Zeus seated on a stool throne. I mentioned open annotations. So open annotations is what we used to use in IIIF version 2. And you can see this is an example of a IIIF version 2 annotation. So instead of ID, we have at ID. Instead of type, we have at type. Also, we have open annotation rather than a W3C annotation. Same motivation. Instead of body, we have resource, which again is the same textual resource. And then instead of target, we have on. But it's very similar, just the the keys in the JSON have changed. If we have multiple annotations, we want to kind of group them together. And in IIIF, we use something called an annotation page to group annotations together. In IIIF, they tend to be all of the images for that canvas are in one annotation page. And then these can be linked into annotation collections. So if you wanted to group all of the transcriptions for all of the pages, you could use an annotation collection. This is the example of an annotation page. So it has an identifier. And with annotation pages, you should be able to copy and paste that annotation page into a browser and open up the annotation. So it's one of these self-referencing IDs, just like you have in a IIIF manifest. The annotations, they don't have to be resolving, but the annotation page does. So we've got the ID, the type, and then we have items and a list of annotations. In this example, there's two. So one which is annotating Zeus seated on a stool throne, and the other one is annotating the other image here. So we have these annotation pages. In IIIF version 2, they used to be called annotation lists, but they're the same form. So again, they have the ID, they have a different type, but then they list annotations in the open annotations format. So first, we're going to have just to play with some annotation tools. So the first one we're going to use is Mirador. So if you open up Mirador, this is Mirador version 2. Mirador 3 does have annotations, so you can play around with that. But this has two items, so we're going to select this one. And in Mirador 2, to execute, to kind of open up the annotation functionality, you can click the speech bubble, which opens up this different type of annotation tooling. So it allows you to draw boxes, ovals, freeforms, polygons, and also points. And you'll see this in a lot of annotation tools, these kind of different ways of drawing boxes. So if I select the rectangle annotation, I can highlight this person here, and I can say a person in a blue shirt. And I can also add tag as well. So person and click save. So this annotation has been edited, it's been associated with this manifest, and I can do as many as I want around this. So it's relatively easy to do, quite quick to do. And if you can have a play just to kind of get a feel for what annotations are like. There's also some extra information. You can also edit the text and you can make it bold. You can also put things in italics. You can also associate images and video files as well. And these are commenting annotations, so we're commenting on the image itself. So you can take 5 minutes to play around with creating annotations to get a feel how it works, but also think about the following questions. What type of project would this be useful for? What might it not work so well with? And then the question is, where are these annotations stored? So this version of Mirador stores the annotations on the browser's local storage. This means they're only accessible on your machine. They're not permanent, so you can't rely on these annotations and they may disappear. But it's perfect storage for a demo site. And if you go and have a look at this and then somebody else looks at this page and does the annotations, you won't be able to see each other's annotations. So how do we make these annotations more permanent? And the answer is with an annotation store. So just like everything else with IIIF, there are many different examples of annotation stores, lots to choose from. Just to give you a few, Annotot is a simple IIIF annotations written in Ruby and Rails by Jack Reed. Elucidate is written by Digerati. They're the company behind the Manifest Editor and the Universal Viewer. Simple Annotation Server is one that I've written back when I was in the National Library of Wales and also kind of updated over the years. Annotate is one that is hosted, which stores the annotations on GitHub a bit like the Workbench does. But for this exercise, we're going to use the Simple Annotation Server, and we're going to look at a project that we ran at the National Library of Wales to do with the National Book of Remembrance, which was hosted by the National Library of Wales in partnership with the Welsh Centre of International Affairs. And you can see the actual item here on the National Library of Wales site. But I'll go through that in a second. Just as a bit of an aside, this is a question that comes up sometimes in the training about DOIs or digital object identifiers. So IIIF wants the manifests and the IIIF images and also the annotation pages and annotations to be unique. But we don't have any strong recommendations about using a particular DOI scheme. So you can use DOIs if you want to. There are a number of institutions that do. But you also can use the different object identifiers if you want to. But this is what we did in the National Library of Wales. So this is a handle. This is a unique digital object identifier for this particular item. This is the same one as above. And if I follow this handle, it will forward it onto the National Library of Wales viewer. That identifier there, the 4642022, also appears in the manifest.json. So that's a unique identifier for that manifest. There are other institutions like the British Library used to, and another BNF does, where they use ARC identifiers, and they actually use the ARC identifier for their manifests. And that's perfectly fine to do. And there's articles on that if you're interested in finding out more. So we're going to look at this project we did for transcribing the Book of Remembrance. The example will demonstrate the following. Share some experiences of using Mirador in a volunteer-led example, use of Mirador with an annotation server, and show some of the customization possibilities in Mirador too. So we're going to use the following version, which uses a annotation store, which version of Mirador, which is connected to the annotation store. It's not the live copy of the book, so the annotations we're creating aren't going to affect the National Library Wales copy. So the Welsh Book of Remembrance is a book that was created after the end of the First World War. And it lists every single person from Wales that fought and gave their lives during the war. So it's over 1,000 pages. It's a really huge book. And it's split into different sections, so different parts of the different regiments that made up the army in Wales. So if we look in the first one, you can see here it's kind of a list of people. This is the Royal Navy, so it lists their rank, their name, the kind of part of the Navy that they were part of, the ship they served in, and also where they were kind of from. And this project was to do with the centenary of the end of the First World War. And it worked with various volunteers around Wales. So we implemented this Mirador instance and the volunteering team in the National Library. They travelled to different areas and held kind of in-person workshops where they got people to transcribe the names in the book. And it was also kind of, in some ways, an act of remembrance to do the transcription and to think of the stories behind the names. And I know it was a really engaging and powerful experience for a lot of the volunteers that were involved in the process. But to show you how it works, so I'm going to click again the speech bubble that we saw earlier. We've customized the interface, so there's only two options available, is annotate and also refresh. So I'm just going to draw a box over the first one here. And then I'm going to type what I see. So t.sub.lit, Eric, Hugh, Allen, r.n.r, Umbala, Cardiff. So I've typed what I see, and now we want to kind of associate the different parts of the text with the different parts. So this particular first one is a rank. So I click the rank to do the highlighting. Eric Hugh Allen is the name. R and R is the unit. Bombala is the ship, and Cardiff is the place. So we customize the annotation interface, so you can do you type what you see first, and then you associate the bits part of text with what these things are. Then I can click save, and once it's loaded, it should be able to see that the annotation has been saved to the annotation store. So feel free to have a go at this yourself. Mirador 2 doesn't work very well with people annotating the same page at the same time. So if you can just pick a random section and add a couple of annotations, just to kind of get a feel of how this works. And this is just a step-by-step guide on how to create those annotations. Again, this is just a kind of a way to experience kind of a project that happened a few years ago and just to see kind of what was involved and see how it worked. So the results, so feel for the volunteers who did all 1,000 pages. It was an enormous amount of work. It was actually completed in a relatively short period of time. So the volunteers were very active and were able to do a number of pages at a time. So it was a quite successful project, and they did manage to transcribe every name in the book. So some questions. So navigate to somebody else's section, and do you see the annotations? So if you navigate to this page, do you see the annotations that I've created? And the answer is yes. So because we've got a shared annotation server, this one doesn't have any sort of authentication. So it means that everybody can see everybody else's annotations and everybody else can edit the annotations, which is kind of fine in kind of a controlled crowdsourcing situation where you've got volunteers kind of physically in the room doing the transcription. So if we take the manifest and view it in Project Mirador, do you see the annotations? And the answer is no, because we haven't associated the annotations with the manifest. So if we were to look at the manifest, we wouldn't be able to see any links to the annotations we've created. And it is possible to add these links so that you add a link to the annotations into the manifest, and then wherever you take your manifest, you see the annotations. And that does happen with the National Library of Wales live version. That does have all of the annotations kind of stuck into the manifest. So whenever you take the manifest to different places, you get to see the annotations come with it. But in this example, this is just a manifest with no links to the annotations, so we don't see the annotations unless we go to the annotation server. And then lastly, if we take the manifest to the universal viewer, what do we see? So we'll do this quickly. So I'll copy this manifest here. I'll just open it. So the first thing to notice is that the universal viewer um, doesn't have any annotation functionality. So there's no way to kind of turn on the annotations in the universal viewer. Currently, that's only available in Mirador and some other viewers like Theseus. But what it does have is this search box. So it is possible to search the annotations, but it's not possible to turn the annotations on and off using the universal viewer. So if we have a look at the annotation, so this is kind of a slightly customized version of an annotation. It's using open annotations, so you can see the at IDs and the at types. It uses something called created. This is kind of part of the open annotations model, but it's just a date when the annotation was created. Again, we have the resource and the on and the motivation we're using commenting. So the resource is the content of the annotation. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to take the text line transcription and split it into the individual parts like rank and other things. So the way we did that is we used HTML and a format called RDFA, which is a way of kind of hiding linked data within HTML fields. There are other ways to do this, which might have been better, but this is the way that we chose to do it. So we've got the rank here, and you can see it's got a class rank, which gives you the coloring, the HTML coloring. But it's also got this property field, which gives you this linked data field for the rank. And we have that for the same for the rest of them. The on is a bit more complicated than we've seen. So this uses something called a specific resource. So it mentions a link to the manifest it comes from, and then it's a selector. So we're using this canvas, and we're saying these are the box that I want to draw. So X, Y, width, height. And if we look more closely at the annotation body, this is it kind of separated out. So this is kind of hiding the linked data within HTML. So you get both the coloring through the HTML, but also then we can process it in a linked data store and do some analysis on it. And I've looked at this. So now that the transcription has been done, I was looking at all the places that were mentioned in the Book of the Remembrance and drew them on the map. And you can see this is kind of a heat map of where people were mentioned. Obviously, it's a Welsh Book of Remembrance, so most people are from Wales. But you can see there are also kind of hotspots in London, in Manchester, in Dublin as well. And it's interesting, Wales is, the population of Wales is kind of very spread out. So there's a lot of population in the south, the capital's in Cardiff and Swansea. So the population matches what's mentioned in the book. And then there's areas of Wales which are very unpopulated, like especially around the mountains in the middle. But then there are also population centres around the coast. So it's interesting that the book kind of replicates population centres in the modern day. And I think this is probably Wrexham. So yeah, interesting to kind of take the data for which is kind of trapped in this book and then be able to, after it's been annotated, be able to take it and then put it onto a map to really visualize what's being shown inside this book. But I've done quite a number of work on this book, and it's really kind of a captivating material to work with. I looked at the ships that were mentioned in the book, and the top number of ships were all lost in the Battle of Jutland, which was a major naval engagement during the First World War. And you can see a lot of the names that were listed were kind of lost in that battle. But one that I found quite interesting was this Canungan, which isn't actually a navy ship, it's a merchant ship. And I saw that there are 10 people listed. Having a look around the internet, I was able to find the 10 people that were registered and their kind of level of service in the book. And it was a coal ship that was attacked. And looking at the National Library of Wales, they've got a big newspaper collection. And you can see that there's newspaper articles about this ship and kind of the fact it had disappeared. And then pulling this all together, I used a tool called Exhibit, which we've got a guest video. And it's really possible to kind of tell the story, starting with the data and doing some more research and investigation. You can tell the story of what happened to Cunningham. So the Welsh Book of Remembrance starts off with talking about the book and the history of it. I mentioned it's over 1,000 pages long and was transcribed as part of the centenary. Um, and as well as the armed service, there's also a list of merchant sailors who lost their lives. One of the ships mentioned is the Cunningham. It was a merchant steam cargo ship. It was based in Cardiff, but on the 17th of November, it sailed from the port of Methil in Scotland with a cargo of coal heading towards Scapa Flow near the Orkney Islands, where the British fleet was based. This is a link to a Welsh newspaper article, but by the 29th of November, there were fears that the ship had been lost in a storm. But after leaving Methil, it ran into a mine left by a German submarine. The ship sank with the only evidence of it passing was a single unidentified body washing up on the beach near Montrose. So one of the parents of the sailors, David Jones, may never have known what happened to their son if it wasn't for a Scottish lady who was on holiday in Wales. So this particular news item talks about a lady who's visiting Newquay, which is just slightly down the coast here, and received a newspaper from home. And reading an account, she went to the local policeman who was able to find the family, and they were able to go up to Scotland and repatriate the body from Scotland and take it back to be buried in Newcastle Emlyn. Seaman David Jones is mentioned in the Book of Remembrance, and also the captain is also mentioned in the book. And the captain was also confirmed lost at sea. So there's information about his wife who was trying to look for probate records and kind of had to argue the case that she should get the inheritance. And that's all covered in the newspapers. So you can see that this exhibit is a really great tool for being able to tell a story. So we've started with the data, we've gathered together different IIIF items from different collections, and we're able to put them into an exhibit to really kind of tell the story of what happened in this instance. And if you're interested in seeing the annotations, you can get all of the annotations for all the pages available in Paul McCann's GitHub repository. So looking at the manifest in the Universal Viewer, we can see a search box. So can you search for the annotations you created? So the one I created was, I think it was Cardiff. And if I click search, hopefully it will find the result. So I can click here. So there we are. And if I hover over it, I can actually see the transcription that I made. So this is one of the features of the Simple Annotation server in that you can do your annotations, and as soon as you've done your annotations, they appear in the search index. So this was used during the transcription. So the more the volunteers did, the more that there was available for the public to be able to search. So it was kind of a live process. Not all annotation servers do that. So some annotation servers, quite often the annotation server is separate to the search service, but the Simple Annotation server happens to do both. So how did this work? So if we have a look at the manifest, and we can open it here, we can see there is a service here, and this is how we link to the IIIF content search, which I mentioned we were going to cover. So it's a relatively simple link. It links to a profile to say this is a IIIF search, and then it links to an ID, which is the search endpoint. So this tells Universe Viewer that there's a IIIF search service available at the following location. So if we open up this in a new URL, we can actually kind of fiddle with the search just like we did with the IIIF image API. So this is the link. By default, this one returns all the results if you don't specify a query, but that's not always the case. But the IIIF search content search specifies a query parameter, which is the thing you're searching for. So if I do Cardiff, and I should say that the content search is a very simple search, so it only really supports this query. There are some slight other parameters that you can ask to get different content back, but mostly the query is the one. So I've searched for Cardiff and I've got a annotation back, which it's got some extra information in, but it's also got the body of the annotation. So you can see this is again the one that I transcribed. And then at the very bottom, I think it's got the on, and it just gives you the canvas and also the box that should be highlighted. And this is enough information for the universal viewer to draw that box and should be able enough to take you to that particular item. And there's a list of query parameters here on the IIIF content search. We've got Q, which is for the query. The query has been renamed Q. Motivations. So I mentioned that these were commenting, but you might have different types of motivations. So some annotation servers support the motivation query. Some support the date. This could be the created date of the annotation. And then also some annotation servers support search by user, so the user that created that annotation. The simple annotation server only supports the Q parameter, the query parameter. Okay, now we're going to have a look at annotating our own content. And we're not going to use Simple Annotation Server because that only supports IIIF version 2 and is also getting a bit long in the tooth. So what we're going to have a look at is a tool called a Marcus, which is a really fabulous tool for creating annotations. It's developed for researcher use, and we're only going to cover some of the features of a Marcus. But it's a really, really interesting tool. One of the technically interesting features is that it stores all the annotations on your machine. So there's no kind of annotation server that needs to be running all the time. All of the annotations are stored locally on your computer, which makes it really easy to use and set up and maintain. And it doesn't cost a lot to run. So it's a really interesting tool. It was developed by a big group, Rainer Simon and a number of others, and they're constantly developing it. So you will see new features as it goes along. Um, it's a annotation tool which is, as I mentioned, local to your machine. So it's not a good tool for collaboration. So if you want to annotate with different people, there are other tools which are better for doing that. So one is Live, which is a bit like a Google Docs for IIIF annotations. And I'd recommend have a look at the guest video. Rainer Simon, the developer behind Marcus, is also a developer of Live, and it's a great way of doing kind of shared collaborating annotating. So this tool is kind of for your own research, and it just gives you kind of an example of what's possible. So the overall steps is you've got to set up a Marcus, and we'll go through that. You load your manifest. You start using some of the annotation tools like Smart Scissors. It also supports auto transcription using large language models, AI models. And then you can use one of the Hugging Face tokens, which is a free service to be able to get access to the token. And then we'll be looking more and finding more information from the Marcus. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing to do is we want to get your manifest, and the best version to use is the one from the workbench. And the reason for this is it's got a public URL, public HTTPS URL to your manifest. So that's the one we want to use when we're starting annotating. If you haven't got that far, then you can use any public manifest. One of my personal favorites is this one from the National Library of Wales. But I will use the one from the workbench. So I'll just close some tabs and get rid of this. So I'll use the Marcus and I'll use this last one. So I'm just going to right click on the IIIF logo and do copy link address. So one thing to note with the Marcus is that because it's using this kind of experimental file-based thing through the browser, only certain web browsers are supported. So you have to use Chrome or Edge for this. And it'll tell you if you go to the website and it says your browser isn't supported, you'll have to switch to either Chrome or Edge. So if you navigate to a Marcus, and if you do, you'll get to this page here first. And the first thing we want to do is to set up the directory that we're going to use to store our annotations. So I'm just going to open a new folder and I'm going to choose IIIF Workshops and then I'm going to create a new folder called Marcus. So new folder, it's going to be empty. I'm just going to do select. It'll ask you if it's okay to allow Marcus to edit their files in this folder. So I'm going to click allow. So now I've got my kind of a Marcus dashboard. And what I want to do is I want to import IIIF. So I want to import my manifest. So I'm going to click import IIIF and I'm going to paste it in my manifest. All being well, you'll get a green tick to say that it's loaded it successfully. And it notes that there are no existing annotations in this manifest yet. So I'll just click import. If you've got multiple manifests, they'll appear as multiple folders. If the manifest has a logo, you might see the logo here as well for the manifest. But I'll just click it to open it. And then you can see the three different canvases that I've got as part of this manifest. And if I want to annotate this one to start off with. So we've gone through the different steps of loading a manifest. I'm now going to start annotating. And a Marcus has this concept of kind of moving mode and editing or annotation mode. And this is done by this box at the top. So I'm currently in the move mode, so I can move around the image and kind of zoom in as much as I want. But if I want to start annotating, I've got to click the annotation side. So now this is highlighted. When I start clicking, I'll start drawing annotations. There are different types of annotations. So just like we saw in Mirador, you can draw boxes, you can draw polygons, ellipses, or paths. But I'm going to stick with just boxes. Now, different to Mirador, where you click and drag to be able to do a box. In a Marcus, you click once and then it automatically creates this box, which you can then drag over and click again to close. And then on the right-hand side, you saw I can either add a tag or add a note. I'm going to add a note for this one. So this person is Benjamin Davis. So I can click save. And then I've got my annotation. So again, I can click to move here, the move mode, and now I can start moving around and I can click annotations and off annotations, and I can also edit them if I want to. So creating annotations is as simple as that, and you can create as many as you want. Next, if we go on to the stage of the smart scissors. So Marcus has lots of different tools to be able to create annotations. And one of these things is the smart scissors. So I'm going to zoom into this picture here. I'm going to go to the smart annotation toolbar. And the first one that's selected is smart scissors. Now you notice that this is highlighted already. So as soon as I open this menu item, I click the smart scissors. So if I was to click around, I'm actually going to do the smart scissors. I can deselect it like that and I'll be back to the move mode. But I want to create the smart scissors. And what the smart scissors does is that if I wanted to pick out this person, I can kind of very roughly draw my points and the smart scissors will kind of try and find the edge. So it's very good for doing quite detailed annotations. It's not 100%, but it's pretty good. And I can kind of drag this and it'll show me where it's going to put it, so I can use slightly less points. I can quickly mark up a shape. This uses some of the computer vision techniques. There we are. So once I've done that, I can then add another note. So this one's called William. And then I can click on back on the move thing, so I can click off it. I can click on this annotation, or I can click onto this annotation. So that's two ways that you can do annotations, either by drawing boxes or shapes, or by using that smart tool, which can snap to the grid. And you can create, as you can imagine, some quite complicated annotations using that tool. So another feature of a Marcus is if we go to the smart toolbar again, it's this auto transcribe, and there are a lot of other features, but I'll only focus on a few. So the auto transcribe allows you to send a region of an image to an AI tool, a large language model, to do the transcription. So first I have to do is go to auto transcribe, and then I can select a service. And note I've selected to enable external AI tools. So from here, I can choose the different model, and each of these are going to require a key or a token to be able to use. So for example, Anthropic Claude is a commercial service, so you'd have to pay for a key. The Google Gemini, I think you can get a free key, although it's a slightly complicated way of getting it. And then the Hugging Face one is the one that we'll work on today, which is free. You just need to register your account, and then you can get a key. So if we go to the Hugging Face, I've already added my key here, but after this is done, I'll go back and we'll look at how to get that key. With the Hugging Face, we've got a couple of models that we can choose from. Quen is the one that I've done in the guide, but maybe we use Gemma this time. So I select my model, and you can see here that I first need to select the area to transcribe. And to do that, I can use this tool. So first of all, I can move in. I'm going to do this text. And then I can use this to, again, click once and draw the box. So once I've highlighted the text that I want to transcribe, I can run the transcription. Now, depending on how much text you select, or how complicated it is, or which model you use, it can be faster or slower. But that was relatively quick using the Gemma model. And then if we highlight over here, we can see what it's got. So it says Benjamin Davis, Brewer Street, Mersham, sentenced several terms of imprisonment for wounding, assaulting police, and drunkenness. So that looks a pretty good transcription as far as I can tell. And then I can click import to Marcus, Marcus if I want to add the annotation. If we have a look at Gemini, I've also got a Gemini key, and you can choose different models again. I think the bigger version number, the better the model, but if we just stick to 2-point flash, I can then draw the box, and then I can set to run transcription. So it's good to be able to use different models to test to see which is different. You can see the Gemini one is done very similar translation. I've tried this with a number of different types of material, and Gemini at the moment is thought to be one of the best models for doing this sort of transcription. So it's definitely a good one to try. With the Hugging Face one, I was trying to OCR or HCR, because it was again handwritten text. I was trying to do this for a diary entry, and it looked like it had done the transcription well. It had gone back and had come back, and I started reading the text, and it didn't have any relation to the text on the image. So you do have to be very careful when you're using this, and just make sure that you're checking the text and making sure that it has a good comparison to what you think is written there. But Google Gemini is supposed to be, as I say, it's supposed to be the best one at the moment, but that cannot change quite quickly when the different models are competing. But I've done my transcription and now I can import that to Marcus. So I can make sure I'm on move. And now if I scroll up, I should be able to see the three annotations. So this is the one that was generated by Google Google Gemini. This is the one that I did manually. And then this is the one using the Smart tool. So to make that work, we needed to get a API key. The one I mentioned was Hugging Face. So Hugging Face is a location where people can host AI models and also data sets used to train AI models. It's kind of like an open place to store different AI machine learning models. It also has something called an inference service, which is a bit like a cloud hosting for AI models, and this allows us to run the model without having to install it locally. It's free to use, but you do need to register with Hugging Face and get that access token. So let's do that now. So if we go to search for Hugging Face, so when you find Hugging Face, you can either log in or sign up. So if you haven't got an account, we can sign up. We've got to put an email address here, so I will just set a new one. And then try and get a password. Click next, and it will ask you to complete your profile. You only need to put the username and password, all the rest are optional, apart from I've read these terms of agreements and click create account. I won't do that now because, as I say, I've already got an account. But there is a step-by-step guide on the website. And once you've completed your profile, it'll then ask you to solve a captcha puzzle. And then it'll also ask you to verify your email. So it'll send you an email and you need to click the link to get back to the website. But when you've done all that, you may well see this login page where you can log in. And then you get to your dashboard for Hugging Face. If you click this thing on the right, you can then go down to access tokens, and this is what we want to create. So if we click create new token, give it a name, so we could call this a Marcus. And then with the only permission that we want to give is this one, which says make calls to inference providers. And then we can scroll right to the bottom and click create token. So this is the only time that you'll see this token, so make sure you copy it. And then this is what we'll use in Marcus, and then click done. So we'll go to Marcus, and then if we wanted to do another transcription, we do the auto transcribe, enable AI tools, select service, and then we go to Hugging Face inference, and then we put the access token in there, and then we could run it just as we've done before. So there are lots of other features. I've only kind of scratched the surface of what's possible with the Marcus, but there is this great wiki here, which contains much more information, much more detailed information about the different tools you can use with the Marcus. I haven't covered tagging, so there's a real kind of large feature set around tagging, creating an orthology about relating different things together, different parts of images. So it's a really powerful tool. So if you do want to find out more, have a look at this wiki. Next, we'll go on to installing an annotation server. So this is completely optional, but just if, as in the image API, if you want to see kind of what's involved, what it looks like to set up an annotation server, then there are some instructions here about installing the SIMP annotation server. So again, completely optional, just if you want to see what it looks like to install the annotation server and get it working with Mirador. And then finally, I just want to talk about some of other annotation tools. So there's a real good mix between annotations and IIIF. mostly because it makes IIIF images really accessible. And then we've also got the web annotation data model, which is wider than IIIF, but we just happen to use it heavily. So there's a kind of really good mix between IIIF and annotations. There is a Google Slides presentation here, which was from a number of years ago, that talks about different annotation projects and crowdsourcing projects that we did at the National Library of Wales, and also different tools that are available to use with IIIF and annotations. Some of the examples is Recogito, which is an earlier version of Ammarcus that you're welcome to have a look at. From the Page is a really good system. It's another kind of a manuscript transcription platform. They've done a lot of work with Google Gemini to do transcription of pages. And it's a system that you can use to collaborate and to work together to do manuscript transcription. And they've done some really interesting things by using AI with a human in the loop so that it does like an AI draft of the text and then allows the user to either correct it or accept it. And then it keeps the fact that AI was involved in the process very key to the transcription. So that's a really interesting project. The Indigenous Digital Archive, I mentioned in the slides, this is a really interesting project. So unfortunately, the website isn't available anymore, but this is a case study from Digerati who worked on the project. And it was all about taking records from National Archives in America to do with Indigenous Americans who were forced to go to boarding schools. And so they took all the copies of those records and they were kind of reinterpreting it, involving the communities that went through this. And it's a really, really interesting project. So there's a video there which you can find more information about it. Other types of annotation tools, I will show you all maps, but I'll go through the other ones next. So Live I've mentioned a few times as a guest presentation. Exhibit is a different type of annotation tool. It's not about kind of drawing boxes. It's much more about telling a story through annotations. So we saw an example of the end product when we were looking at the Book of Remembrance, but the exhibit allows you to kind of create a slide and then zoom into an area of an image. And it's a really good tool for using for your final project if you wanted to give that a go. Madoc is a crowdsourcing project developed by a number of IIIF community members plus Digerati. So it's a really interesting one. I mentioned that we used Mirador in the National Library of Wales for the Book of Remembrance project. And it did go quite well, but there were a few issues with it, particularly drawing the boxes in Mirador isn't the most easiest to do, and we were working with all types of volunteers, some who weren't that experienced at using computers, and so it wasn't the easiest of tools, or the most accessible tool to be able to do the transcriptions. So we went out to tender for a crowdsourcing system, and Madoc was the kind of the final release of that. And it's a great way of being able to take in a manifest and be able to customize what you want to get. So particularly they worked with photographs from a photographer in North Wales, and they wanted to identify people and also events and times. And they were able to kind of configure that in Madoc and then send it out to the community, and they were able to enter that information. So it's a really interesting way of working with a crowdsourcing project. Glycerine is another annotation tool, so it's a bit more like a researcher-focused tool. It's also got lots of AI features similar to Ammarcus, and you can load in manifests and have a play with that. I think there's an open version where you can have a look and see how it works by following that link. So as you can see, there are lots of different annotation tools. I'll just start now and just have a quick look at All Maps. So All Maps is a really interesting project, and it's all about making IIIF maps available. And also, I mentioned about this georeferencing extension. So it's a way of kind of adding that, but let's have a look at this. So if we go to the All Maps editor, okay, so now let's look at the maps that we can edit. So there are a selection of maps that we can georeference, which are available on the main site. But I'm going to choose this one from the National Library of Wales. So I can click this icon here and then right click on the IIIF logo and do copy link address, which will copy me a link to the manifest, which I can paste into here. So I mentioned the universe viewer sometimes adds this manifest equals, which we don't need, so just a manifest. Okay, so we've got this image. This can cope with multiple images. You might have lots of copies of maps in this particular item. It might be one map with two maps inside it, so like an inset, and you can identify and georeference them separately. So the first item is to draw a mask, and this is identifying the parts of the image that make up the map. So you can see you've got an inset here, which potentially we could georeference separately, but I'm going to ignore that at the moment. So to draw a mask, I just need to click around the parts of the map. Uh, Avoid this here. Then click at the start. So I've got a mask. As I said, I could draw another mask around this one if I wanted to georeference that separately. And I could also edit the marks. So once I've drawn my mask, I then can georeference it. And this is the case of looking at a modern map and the historical map and marking the same points. So this is a map of Aberystwyth. So if we zoom in, we are looking for things which are common between the two maps. So the first thing I notice is the church. And I'm also going to change the base map to OpenStreetMap. So we've got the church here, St. Mary's, so I can click the side here and the side there. You can do as many points as you want. Obviously, the more points you have, the better um, the georeferencing. And then it's got Great Street, which is here. So this ends about here, so I can put that there. And then if I can find another one down here. Sometimes it's good to do different kind of points in like north, south, east, west to get a better conversion. So I think this bridge is the one over here. So I can do this side, and then this side, and this side. And then maybe one to the north. With the rocks and the beach. Okay, so we've done those points and it's kind of given us a guide about where it thinks this map should go. And we can look at the results and you can see it's overlaid the modern map, the historical map onto the modern map. So if I zoom in a little bit, I can then change the current image to this image and I can kind of do the zooming in and hopefully that's a good map. But you see now that I can kind of take a manifest from anywhere, I can import it into all maps and then I can do the georeferencing. And it also allows to export all the control points or export them as the IIIF georeference and extension. Great, so if we go back. Okay, so I hope that was interesting. So we've been through how annotations work, looking at some annotation servers, and then also kind of a deep dive into Amarcus, which is a really powerful annotation tool. So yeah, if you want to have a go with that, and I look forward to seeing what you get up to. Brilliant. Thank you.